Welcome back to another episode of the MacRumors Show, episode 148. Should we start doing that? Should I start saying what number episode this is at the beginning?
You could do.
You know? Yeah, we're almost at the big 150. In fact, I think it might line up. Episode 150 might be a very special. Did this happen last time too? Did the 100th?
I feel like
the 100th
something
episode
like that happened last time.
Yeah, I mean, we can just say it. The episode in 2 weeks is going to be live from WWDC. So back at Apple Park, like we did last year. Don't wear shorts, Hartley, unless you want everybody to look at your knees and get comments again.
I know. I think I've learned from that mistake.
Yeah, same here. I think I'll wear pants. You know what? I don't care. I'll wear whatever I decide to wear. It's like 100 degrees out there. I'm not. Oh yeah, for you that's hot. Let me rephrase what 100 degrees Fahrenheit is.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
What would that be in Celsius? Like 30?
I don't know. I don't understand hot. Your strange measurement system.
I don't understand your strange
30 is hot,
system.
Yes.
Is that ungodly hot?
Not really.
30, 40?
That would be ungodly hot.
Okay. Like 40 never happens, or like it rarely happens?
I mean, that might happen like once a decade.
Okay. So like 38?
I mean,
I don't know how this
very
works.
rare.
If you go down 2 degrees, so 30 is not that hot, but like anything after that?
No, 30 would be hot. Like 30 over a few days would be a heat wave here. But we overreact when there is any sunlight at all.
Okay, so 30 Celsius different. That's 86. That's like pretty much what it would be out in California around this time. It's actually what it's going to be out here in Cleveland in like a few days. But that is hot. Like anything, once you start approaching 90 degrees, you're like, all right, this is uncomfortable. And once you get to 100, you're just like, I'm not going outside. So 40 Celsius is 104. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't really happen in my area a lot, but it does happen more out west. Anyways, now that we're done with weather talk, I wanted to bring up numbers.
An exhilarating conversation.
Yeah. Well, numbers, is a big part of today's episode because
very topical. It's a very good segue. You recovered that so well.
I've done this for 148 episodes now, so I think I've kind of got the hang of it, but we're still learning. Yeah, so if you haven't already heard the pretty big news, even though it's just naming, it's still pretty big because, I don't know, do you think Apple is learning now? And do you think this will transition to the hardware? So the big news is iOS 19 might not actually be called iOS 19, or I guess it's pretty much confirmed now that it's probably going to be iOS 26, named after the year in which it was released. Now, before you say anything, I am fully aware that it will be released in 2025, but Apple's doing the whole like car manufacturers thing, and it makes sense. At first, I really disliked this, and I'm like, that's going to be even more confusing but then I realized that for most of the life cycle of this software release, it's going to be in 26. So if you name it 2025 or, iOS 25, maybe some people will be like, well, am I on the wrong one? Like it's, March of 26, like that's old now. So I don't know, but I understand what they're going for here. So Hartley, what do you think about this new name change? And do you think this is going to transition down to the iPhone? Like I was saying you should do way back when we've had many arguments about how do we properly identify the iPhone lineup?
It does make me feel very strange, but I think it makes sense.
Okay.
I think so. I can't quite make my mind up because I'm so used to thinking about iOS 19 as the next version of iOS. The whole idea of iOS 26, it feels like I've just jumped forward.
Oh, yeah.
And it just feels a little strange, but I think it makes sense. And I think for ordinary users who maybe don't update their devices with the same discipline that we do, it makes sense because you could then think, okay, I'm running iOS 26 and you're still in 2028 at that point. Okay, time to upgrade to iOS 28.
Can you even get that far in not upgrading your device? At some point, it's just going to do it for you.
I've encountered someone recently who was still running, I think it was iOS 16, just because they put off upgrading.
I say the only
which
way I've
to me makes no sense, but
so I've had that actually. I have a couple of devices that are a few years old, but it's devices that I haven't turned on in 2 years. So it's like when you're finally getting around to turning it on, you have to upgrade, and it's a few years out of date. But I can't imagine consistently using. At some point, apps become no longer like you have to update if you want to use specific apps because they're just too far gone. I don't know. That's remarkable.
I think it would be useful as well for in the situations where devices lose support, and then maybe you keep that device around. If you know that the latest you have updated that device is to whatever it is at that point, iOS 29, then you know that that device has been left behind with a software that was released in that year, which makes it really clear. It just feels a little bit strange. It's good in the sense of making the whole lineup consistent, because then you've got tvOS 29, you've got macOS 29, whatever it may be. And everything is in alignment. And then you know as well, if maybe you haven't updated your Apple Watch, but you have updated your phone, you have more of a sense of when everything has got this parity across all platforms, especially now where Apple tends to release features for every platform simultaneously. On the whole, not obviously, I mean, not everything that comes to macOS is coming to watchOS, but on the whole, when these features are introduced, there is a high level of crossover. And this year, the big level of crossover will be the design.
I mean, visionOS 2 to visionOS 26 is quite the jump. I'm expecting some insane new features. No, but for real, it does make our lives a little easier in trying to remember where is every. I think the other day I was doing something on tvOS, and I'm like, tvOS 19 sounds wrong, but it is right in that it's matched with iPad, iOS, and that's it. Then there's watchOS is on 12.
Yes.
And then macOS is 16. And so you see like visionOS is 2. Like you understand now where this is like, okay, I guess this does make sense. But like you said, I feel the exact same way. This is pretty weird. Like I'm not going to get used to it until we have a year of this. And then I think we'll be fine.
The numbers make sense from the perspective of making things clear. But I think what I would have preferred, oddly, was adopting macOS style names for all the platforms.
Oh, so, like naming it with like...
Yeah, so we'd have like iOS Redwood or whatever it would be.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Because then, like, okay, so Google's, let's see, Android naming for the last however many years. Google doesn't do a good job at this. No offense to them. But they kind of did, actually, when they used to do... So do you remember the Android... operating, it used to go through the entire alphabet. So that was clever, you know, their alphabet, the company, and it went through the alphabet, but it went through it in dessert names. So technically 1.0 and then 1.1. And then it was like that was A and B. And then it just went cupcake, donut, eclair, froyo, gingerbread. And it went all the way down to pie. And then I think they just gave up. Maybe they couldn't find anything with a Q. And then they started going into numbers. But like the design language has names too. And so it's like material expressive or whatever is the new one. And like, I don't know, I feel like you're starting to get into a weird point where those names would be even harder. Just, I think what they're doing is probably the right call.
I agree. And I think to your point about the iPhone and whether this is going to move over, I think eventually it will, but I don't think we're anywhere near. And I actually have a theory about how the iPhone's naming is going to progress. Okay. So this year we are expecting the iPhone 17 lineup. Then next year in 2026, we are expecting the iPhone 18 lineup. 2027 is expected to be this big year with this 20th anniversary redesign that we've heard so much about. And the last time Apple did that was the iPhone 10. Now, the iPhone 10 at that time they thought would be the iPhone 9, but Apple skipped a generation. There was never an iPhone 9.
Right.
I can see Apple doing that with iPhone 19 for the same reason. It feels too on the cusp of something, and that will be the 20th anniversary year. So they will probably go iPhone 17, iPhone 18, iPhone 20, And then because iPhone 21 is a very wordy title, I imagine from that point onward, they will go for a different titling system. And what that will be, I don't know, but that would be the time to do it, because I just can't see them going for the 20th anniversary iPhone, which is coming out, and there's the second generation foldable, and the lineup's got really big. And they're calling that the iPhone 19 lineup, to be followed by the iPhone 20 lineup, to be followed by the iPhone 21 lineup.
Yeah.
It's got to change at some point. And I think iPhone 14, 15, 16, 17 even is okay. But for the same reason, iPhone 9 would have sounded a bit strange, because it's just so on the edge around number, and especially in an anniversary year. iPhone 19, in my opinion, is going to be out. And that is pure speculation, but that's just my suspicion.
That makes sense. Do you think Apple will name it iPhone XX but still call it 20?
I don't know. I mean, they might. I mean, the whole thing with iPhone 10 being branded as an X was a little bit strange anyway, because they don't use Roman numerals for anything else. And while I call it iPhone 10 and Apple calls it iPhone 10, everyone else I have ever encountered pretty much who's not in the tech community calls it iPhone X, and then the next generation calls it iPhone XS, which sounds completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I don't think I would relish people saying, "Oh, I've got the iPhone XX."
The iPhone X name that people always said, when it irked me, because I'm like, oh, that's not what it's called. That's almost as bad as people calling the Apple Watch iWatch, which, by the way, I still have people to this day. I mean, it's been how many years of this? Over 10 years, right? People still call it iWatch. Hey, when's the new iWatch coming out? I'm like, oof. We got to get this straightened out here. That'll be interesting to see how that goes. But do you think these reports? I mean, not to doubt Mark Gurman, but sometimes there's just random reports like this. But I'm guessing because of how late this is.
Yeah, and this has been corroborated now as well. And apparently references to both iOS 19 and iOS 26 have been found alongside each other. So Apple's kind of tried to disguise it so that people would not notice, because you can see in web consoles what devices are visiting different websites. And there are devices out there right now that are running iOS 19.2 that are visiting websites, including our own.
I was going to say, that's how we usually find things. You people have to stop going on our website with these different devices. Actually, keep doing it, because it's good for business. But I mean, that's hilarious. I always laugh at that.
It's unavoidable, because when this many people are testing software, they're going to need to use the internet and access a large number of websites. So that makes sense.
Go to macrumors.com.
I am intrigued by what Apple will do with the iPhone eventually, because I can't see them at the same time saying, okay, so it's 2028 and this is the iPhone 28. So you've got the iPhone 28 Pro, the iPhone 28 Pro Max, because at that point you might keep that device. And so then you're going to eventually be running a version of iOS. So you will be having the iPhone 28 running iOS 31.
Yeah.
And it just starts to feel a bit messy.
So that is where things get weird. I always just said to just call it iPhone and iPhone Pro. And then to distinguish which one it is, in parentheses, you put the year name. But most people wouldn't call it. They'd be like, oh, I have the iPhone. Oh, which one did you have? Well, I have the latest one, or I have the one from 28. That's how it would go. How many normal people are talking about what model and year they have? I guess it's pretty common to be like, which one do you have? And then they say the iPhone 14, or I think I have the 13 or whatever. It's usually how it goes. So I guess I don't know. This is a weird ground that we're in right now. Just it's
got to be dealt with at some point.
Yeah.
And there is a conflict here, because devices like the iPad and the MacBook Pro don't use this. They don't use numbers. We don't refer to it being the MacBook Pro 26. We refer to it just as the new MacBook Pro, and we would refer to it by model year on the whole. And we increasingly refer to it by chip, and we'll say, okay, that's the M2 Pro MacBook Pro. So maybe they will go in the direction of naming it after the chip. But then we have the whole thing then about what are we calling the chips?
A37 iPhone 6, iPhone, the A37. So I think what the right thing to do then is just do what we do, like you said, for the MacBooks. Whenever I title something or I refer to a MacBook, I say well, I guess you put the chip in there too. The 2025 M4 MacBook Pro or whatever it is. I don't know if that was correct. Actually, when did that come out?
There is an issue with that, and I think that logically that makes sense, and I would like that, but for marketing purposes, it isn't very helpful. It's helpful for us in the tech community, but if you're an average user, but you like having the latest iPhone, there are a lot of people like that every year like to go and trade in their previous generation device and go and buy whatever the latest flagship is from Apple. And those people really like being able to say, okay, well, I had the iPhone 15 Pro Max, but now I've got the iPhone 16 Pro Max. And next year I'm going to get the 17 Pro Max. And they appreciate that very clear iteration. And this was part of the reason why Apple actually phased out using S years, because people perceived the S years to be extremely incremental updates when actually they're no different to anything that we have today. They were just indicative of when iPhone designs would run on a 2-year cycle and it would be the second year of that design. Whereas now Apple doesn't care. I mean, effectively the iPhone 13 was an iPhone 12S, if you like.
I guess they could always just come back with another chip name, like you said. I know we're getting pretty high up there in the A's, so maybe they just do a different letter, just like the X1 Pro chip. So it's the, iPhone X1 or something. I don't know. That sounds stupid, to be honest with me, but
they've got to do something right. And they've got to do something that appeals to ordinary users. Because if you think when they have these billboards out for iPhones, if you were someone who currently has an iPhone 16 Pro Max and you see the billboards around for that, you know that you've got that device because it says iPhone 16 Pro Max, not because of what it looks like, because it looks basically exactly the same as the 15 Pro Max.
Yeah.
So if this year they put out a billboard for the 17 Pro Max, and yes, it will have a slightly different camera bump, but the average user may not even notice that. If it doesn't actually say iPhone 17 Pro Max, how are they going to know that it's different?
The new iPhone, you just put new after every single time.
Yeah, but that's Apple uses that stuff all the time, and that's the issue.
I don't know. I think it's got to be by year, and I think you got to put the year first.
I probably, but even like car manufacturers don't use that. I think that
they
maybe
don't they?
Yes, but it isn't like you won't see a billboard saying, well, this is the.
How many billboards do you see for cars, anyways?
Well, yeah, but that's why Apple's marketing strategy is different, because Apple loves a bit of billboard advertisement.
Apple loves them some billboards.
Yep.
So, yeah, I've got nothing after that, really. So,
okay.
The iOS 19 is going to be 26, apparently. But until then, until we have official word, and for the sake of my brain, I'm just going to keep calling it iOS 19. And recently, we've got some iOS 19. Well, kind of. So, apparently, iOS 19 design changes. We knew that they were coming to iPadOS. That makes sense. We have heard that some of the features will carry on to macOS, but we're not totally sure about the design changes, correct? Have we heard anything about
those are also supposedly now coming over.
Okay.
So
well, now we're hearing more about Apple TV and the Apple Watch getting the same kind of design aesthetics. So what are your thoughts on Apple TV? So this is a big one for me because I've been asking for an Apple TV refresh for a while. Do you think this is going to go beyond just changing the translucency, and is it going to be more so like the TV app when you kind of go in and you go to that sub menu, the Apple TV Plus app, and you get that little floating pill bar? Is that kind of what we're going to see more throughout, or is it bigger than this?
I think so. I think it probably will be just refreshing the interface, and I think the best example we have of that is iOS 7. iOS 7 didn't fundamentally redesign actual navigation. What it did was just provide a complete system-wide change to the look, because that's such a lot of work to do that, and to do that across every platform and make sure everything feels good and looks good is already enough of a challenge without having to reconsider really fundamental things about the platform. I still think it will make tvOS feel a lot more fresh. I mean, some years they don't even mention tvOS at the keynote, and if they do, it's maybe 1 or 2 minutes. It's very much an afterthought platform. So it will be nice to see it refreshed a little bit.
It got what? It got 1 minute when it mentioned Insight. Maybe was that it? And like some of the enhanced dialogue stuff. Maybe I don't remember if it was at WWDC or if it was a different thing. But yeah, I'm ready for let's get like a solid 5 minutes on tvOS, maybe. Or is it's going to be what's going to happen. It's going to be in passing. Like, oh, and we brought all the design changes to all of our other platforms, and look at tvOS. Look at how new this is. But there's not going to be, do you think there's going to be a lot of new features, or is it just the design overhaul, the little facelift? Like, how drastic do you think the home screen's going to look? Or is that the same?
I think the home screen will look drastically different because all of the icons will be redesigned. They probably will be more rounded. There will be all this added translucency. And I think that you're right to point out the changes to the TV app and the way that navigation has changed there. That probably will move to other places on the system.
Okay.
But I think when we bear in mind the context here that Apple has had a lot of pressure on its developers over the last year.
Yeah.
I think that Apple Intelligence and a redesign of every single software platform is probably enough for them to have done.
Well, there needs to be Apple Intelligence features for Apple TV in the future. There just has to be. That's where it makes a lot of sense. Like, we've talked about this a little bit before, but with Amazon doing the whole like find me shows with, and then like, generating prompts, or we can't really do that, if at all, on an Apple TV box. And so I want something like that. I want better recommendations. Take the personal data of mine for this specific scenario and find me something that you think with the utmost confidence that I'm going to enjoy watching. Because right now, everyone's got analysis by paralysis. Please find aggregate all of the things that I am literally like a subscriber to, not just that I have the app on my thing, like that kind of stuff. Let's limit the content and show me the things that I am already paying for. And I don't know, I just feel like there's so much that could be done there to make the experience even better. So that's where I would like some new Apple Intelligence features. I don't think it's going to happen this year, maybe not even next year.
I would even just settle for widgets. I would really like the ability to just put like a really basic weather widget on my home screen on Apple TV.
Yeah, I do want a facelift of the UI. I think there needs to be. I think we need to get rid of the Apple TV app. Like in the sense of that should not be the main hub for like, here's your continue watching. Like, put that on the front, put that on the home screen. That the Apple TV app should just be for Apple TV Plus content. They have enough stuff by now, I feel like, right?
I agree.
I think we're past this point of like, oh, now you got Apple TV channels. Like, I don't know. I like that. I see what they were trying to do, and they were trying to aggregate everything and put it in the Apple TV Plus app for you. But like, I don't know if that's not how I behave in my sense. Like, I'm subscribed separately through all different, types of things. Like Verizon, my account gives me deals with, like, I can't link them all like that, or at least I don't think you can. So I just feel like that is the best way to kind of get everything. Just put it all on the home screen, take it all out, put the For You and all the recommendations, your continue watching, and just leave Apple TV Plus as a standalone app for its own content and your library of things that you purchased. That is it. I think other than that, it should all be separated. But that's Apple TV.
I agree. I don't think I think that the Apple TV app is too overloaded. I think that it's especially confusing. I've had it, with members of my family where they navigate to the Apple TV segment of the TV app by accident, and they see their up next queue, and it only includes Apple TV shows, and they think, where has everything else gone in my up next?
Yeah.
And it's because they've inadvertently navigated to that section, and it still looks like up next. Same goes for channels. Same goes for everything else really in that app. I think that it could be separated. I think Apple is also in this slight conflict because it thinks that if it has control over that app, then it can put Apple TV front and center, which it can, but it can still do that while making it way easier to have up next across all apps at the forefront. And it's such a good feature when it works.
Right.
It's very buggy, but I don't think that's really Apple's fault. I think it's the fault of developers and how they've integrated it.
I'm going to be honest with you. And if Apple developers that have any kind of power or say in this can do this, you need to cut loose that idea of like, we're going to control everybody because we're putting, we can control the app. It's linked with us, but we can put our content ahead of it, like you just said. I think that harms the user experience, not being able to have Netflix and a lot of these other apps that just don't want that. I still will go to Apple TV because Apple TV has some great shows. You're doing fantastic with your content. Market that in a different way. I almost don't even care if the banner at the front, at the homepage, you have your row of like, this is what you've been watching for you, apps, right? Those are your things. And then at the top, you know how we have right now, when you're at the top, it swipes through like just different content. Make that your Apple TV, ads, basically. Just swipe through the different content of Apple TV Plus shows. I don't care. That's fine. But to like limit the continue watching to apps that have just kind of followed suit and will let you have that is just frustrating. I know most apps are probably in there, but there's some that are not. And Netflix is a big one. And I just think that harms. And then you can do so much other stuff with the ability to be able to include everyone and aggregate everyone that I just think that, I don't know. If you want to market yourself first in the algorithm, fine. I'm not going to blame you for it, even though it's kind of lame. But I think you should at least try to give what the user is looking for, regardless of whether you're the creators of that content or not.
I completely agree. I would love to see Netflix adopt some sort of support for Up Next. I don't think it will ever happen, but it actually makes me less inclined to keep my Netflix subscription because every other app I have supports it.
Yeah. I know someone personally who, despite the fact that they just like seeing that content and being able to know what's next, and like they just forget about shows because they don't often go to the apps. They literally only use the like home screen of the TV Plus app where you get your recommendations and where you get your Up Next. And so they often forget about shows from Netflix and then have eventually canceled it because they're like, I don't use this app anymore. So I'm sure he's not the only one that does that. So it's, I don't know. It's just a frustrating thing altogether. Okay, so Apple Watch, that's the other thing, a part of this. I don't know. Just more translucency there. I mean, I don't really know how to visualize.
There's less you can do with that on the Apple Watch.
Yeah.
But I think it is interesting that years ago, this would have been a little bit inconceivable on the Apple Watch. But with watchOS 10, apps started to become full screen and full color. Just take a look at something like the weather app. In watchOS 9, that was a black background app with fairly basic information. Now it's in full color. It extends edge to edge to take advantage of the fact that Apple Watch now has larger displays. So I can see a visionOS style redesign working on the Apple Watch now.
The last thing I wanted to mention is this rumor about a dedicated gaming app to replace Game Center. Now, my first question for you, and I'm sure everybody would like to know, is this something that's going to launch in the next 2 weeks, week and a half, or be announced at WWDC?
I believe so.
Okay. And what do you think this app's going to be called? Do we have any rumors on what that's going to be called?
It might be something just like the Game Store.
There
isn't anything. There aren't any rumors, but I don't know because this app has got to do. It's got to do three things. All of the games that are currently on the App Store are going to move out of the App Store and into this new place. So it's a place to buy games, not just through Apple Arcade. The second thing is Apple Arcade, which is currently living in, at least on everything except the Apple TV. It lives in the App Store. So you've got third-party games, you've got Apple Arcade, and then also Game Center, which isn't an app. It's sort of hidden away in settings. It includes achievements and some social features. It's very old, and a lot of people probably don't even know it's there. But that also is being rolled into this app. And it may also work as a kind of launcher for apps, for games as well, which I think makes a lot of sense because I know that it used to annoy me when I used to do a lot more mobile gaming on my iOS devices when I was younger. It always used to annoy me that my home screen would just get flooded with games. And this was before there was an app library, and you had to drag them all into separate folders. And it just felt like this wasn't the same thing. Whereas something like Steam on the Mac, the way that acts as a launcher for games makes things a lot more straightforward. And interestingly, one element of this rumor that I think is fascinating is apparently on the Mac, this new games app will integrate with third-party games that have not been downloaded through the Mac App Store. So it will work with things like Steam.
So you can have your Steam library in this game app library, basically, and launch from there.
Ostensibly, that's what it looks like it should do. And I think that's a great feature.
It's a great idea. Absolutely.
It's really sorely needed because mobile gaming has been really strong on iOS and iPadOS for years. It's not particularly strong on the Mac, and it's not because the titles aren't available now, but it does feel like an accessibility issue because if I download a game on my Mac, it appears next to all of my other like productivity apps, and it's just there in Launchpad, and it just feels really out of place. I don't want to see it in Launchpad. I want to go to a games launcher. And it would actually probably make me more inclined, and I'm sure other people be more inclined to view the Mac and Apple devices in general as gaming devices because there is this thing to tie it all together. And I'm sure that Apple's had feedback to suggest that.
Sure. I think even if they just brought the Game Center out, like kind of like the Passwords app, just making it Game Center, but it's got its own app now, its own icon, it's its own thing. And then you have like Apple Arcade exclusives. If Apple ever gets into... can you imagine if Apple just bought games like AAA games that are going to be and then make them exclusives for the Mac? And if they really want to be taken seriously in gaming, especially for, desktop gaming, like that's the next step. But you can't do this with Apple Arcade titles all the time. It's not going to work as well. And I know they have some games that are doing way better than what they've ever done before, but I still feel like people don't take them seriously. And I think this is a nice next step into getting everything organized, getting everything in one location. And then if they can truly tap into non-Mac App Store games, I mean, I think this just kind of helps build the credibility.
I agree. And I think that the hardware now is there for gaming because Apple's silicon is so powerful. And there is a level of parity now across Apple devices where in an ideal world, you should be able to connect a PlayStation controller to your Apple TV, play a game there, and then pick up where you left off on your iPad. And then if you want to, play it on your phone or your Mac as well. But the titles just are too expensive or they're not there. And if you don't have the latest titles, you only have old remasters of games. Why would I invest in that library? I might want that one game, but is this somewhere where I'm going to actually be able to move my gaming life over to that? And I think like the iPad could be a great competitor for something like the Switch in a lot of ways because it's got a great display on it. It's very powerful. It's very portable and it's way better at other things. So chances are you probably already have an iPad if you don't have a Switch. But Apple just is not supporting that well enough. I would love to see some of that budget that goes into Apple TV shows going into having an in-house game studio that every year releases a really good, interesting title.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. If you
with Apple's full support.
Yeah, either you come up with it yourself and it's an original, or you absorb a studio that has something that they already like and then just develop from there. But that's the way to go. I do think it would be cool to have an app where you can also just kind of know like what you've been playing and resume from there. Like basically like the Apple TV Plus or the Apple TV app, where you're just like continue watching. This is continue playing for my kids, especially because like my son can't find some of the games. He's 3. So, he's having a hard time. But if he knew there was just one location that he needs to be in, it's a little bit easier to find the games that he's been playing. And I think that would just be helpful for parents and even people who, just don't want to, like you said, litter their home screen with gaming apps to easily access. I'm excited to see some of this stuff. I think this is going to be a good WWDC. We have less than 2 weeks. We should have hands-on with betas, and next week we'll probably touch on a little more rumors that come out, and then the following week will be all of this stuff, and then we can kind of put a pin on WWDC for the most part. We'll hit that summer. This is kind of like a schedule outline. We'll hit that summer break, and then it's iPhone season already. That's crazy. Are you ready?
I think so. I'm quite excited to see the little features. I say this every year, but it's the things that haven't been rumored. That's always the most exciting bit for me.
The list that you go on after the event is done, and it says like, and here's everything else. Like, that's the cool stuff, in my opinion. Like some of the nice, neat hidden things that you find.
It could be the tiniest things, like reminders in calendar, or just some tiny little thing that you think, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you, Apple, for not, ruining something and making it better. Okay, so one last thing, and you don't know that I'm going to ask you this.
Okay,
because I saw a tweet from you the other day that said you actually kind of like camera control.
Yeah,
I need 2 minutes. I need you to give me 2 minutes or less on what made you come to this realization.
Right. So I don't like the pressure sensitivity. I stand by that. But it is definitely useful as an additional action button. And I find that now I can launch the camera app so much faster because wherever I am in the system, if I've unlocked the device, if I haven't, if I'm just pulling it out of my pocket, I can get to camera so fast now.
Yeah.
And although I don't particularly like using camera control to take a picture from the front because it does kind of jolt the device and it's actually way faster to just tap the display. Mm-hmm. Occasionally, if I'm turning the device around to take like a selfie and I'm using the rear cameras because they're a lot better, the camera control is great for that.
Yeah.
So there's two things about it that I quite like now. I don't like the pressure sensitivity, and I'm never going to be one of these people that's there like doing it like this, like in the ads, because it's just silly to me why you wouldn't just tap the display. But the whole idea, if we want to call this a second action button that is just for launching the camera, it's great.
That's what I've been using it for, and that's what I was trying to tell you. Like, it's a bad feature in the sense of like everything else besides just dedicating a button to doing some easy or some normal camera related functions easily. It took me a minute to retrain my brain from the action button to go to the camera control button, but now I use that exclusively. Do you double tap or single tap?
Single.
Ooh, living life on the edge. How many accidental?
Yeah, I seem to be okay with it.
Okay.
I don't think I have, because it's the whole thing that I don't particularly like about the camera control in terms of actually using it as intended, is that it's quite hard to press. So that's why it's easy as a launcher, but a little bit stupid to take pictures with because you've got to be very stable. And there is an element of jolts that you just don't get by just tapping the display.
Be honest, you're not taking pictures like this anyways. You aren't.
No.
Some people are.
No.
But you aren't. You're taking it like this.
But I don't understand why you would want to do that anyway. I don't get it. I don't understand the advantage of doing that.
What do you mean? It's not in the right spot, first off. It should be a little bit lower, like right here.
Yeah.
For those of you who are watching on YouTube, you see my finger. That's the perfect spot, in my opinion. That feels more comfortable. I have to go up here. That's not comfortable. So, but I understand what they were trying to do. That's like a normal camera, from growing up as an old person here. That's what you took a photo.
Even then,
maybe you aren't used to that, but
if you use a mirrorless camera and you have that kind of two-step shutter, the button's very, very easy to press through the first step.
Yes.
And that situation is just not what you experience with this because there is no feedback of that first press. And although, yes, you get a little haptic feedback, you don't feel anything depressing to that point. And then because you've got to depress really quite hard on a device, otherwise, when you tap it very gently, it feels out of place. And when you have a big grip on a proper mirrorless camera, that thing isn't moving. But a phone that's this thin, when you're actually applying that pressure, you do get jolts. And that doesn't mean that there's camera blur, but it does mean that it just feels a bit odd that if I'm taking a picture like this, I can feel the device moving. And if I frame my shot nicely, why would I do that?
Maybe you need to get steadier hands. I don't know. I will say
that's what the comments will say. The comments are all going to say, "Oh, I'm too weak to press the button." I know it.
I feel lots of depressing things, but one of them is not camera control. So I will agree with you there. Let's wrap it up. We'll catch everybody. If you made it this far, though, let us know if you've changed your mind like Hartley on camera control, or just let us know your thoughts on iOS 19 becoming iOS 26. Is it stupid? Is it great? Is it okay? You don't care? Let us know, and we'll catch everybody in the next episode.